Hey Rusty, how's it going? Hey, how you
Oh, it's
doing?
going fantastic. We recording?
Can you feel the love tonight?
I can
Uh,
always feel the love tonight,
feel
except when
some.
Donald Glover's voicing Simba.
Oh, okay.
Ooh, shade
Damn,
there.
it's gonna be
Oh,
like
I'm
that.
here too. I didn't watch this movie, but
Oh,
hello.
hey, Alec, just kidding. Donald
Alec,
Glover's amazing as Simba.
what's going on, Alec?
Yo.
So you're gonna be present. You're gonna be moderating this event here tonight. Uh, we are
Yeah,
going to be.
actually, that's a good idea. I
Okay.
could have thought of that myself.
Keep
Yeah,
it
I should be
clean.
the one asking the question. Yeah. Okay. So I didn't see The Lion King. I was going to last night, but work just went so long. It's a long, complicated, messy, frustrating story. But I couldn't go see it, unfortunately, and we didn't get to go see it on vacation. We were just so busy doing other things. So, um, but obviously, there's a lot of buzz around this movie. Some of it positive, some of it negative. It's definitely a divisive movie, to be sure, and I definitely fell in the camp of I was going to see it for the channel, but to be frank, I didn't really have that much interest in seeing it. I went and saw Aladdin. We were going to do an episode on that. Zach actually never got around to seeing that. Uh, Fairly positive feelings about it myself. But this isn't about Aladdin. This is about Lion King, so we're going to try to stay focused on that.
Hmm.
I was just kind of like, looks very impressive, but I just wasn't necessarily sure how I felt about it. So maybe in this, maybe you guys can help me come around, depending on how you guys feel about it exactly. Maybe how you guys can help me come around. Maybe I'll go see it at some point. Um, but start things off.
Dude.
Got a plane taking off on Zach then. So let's take off. Let's take off into the discussion right
I
now.
want to hear Rusty's
Floor it.
perspective.
Okay.
I do as well. I've heard a little bit of this because I heard you and Ryan talk about it on the podcast, but it's a refresher for me and for other listeners. So just give us some like general impressions, maybe your lead up to seeing the movie, kind of your thoughts going in.
Absolutely. So I think a couple things to take in or keep in mind here. So seeing this movie, the build up to it, and I don't want to like over exaggerate or be super hyperbolic here, but leading up to this was kind of like the lead up for Kingdom Hearts 3 for me. Not that I was anticipating or waiting for a live action remake of Lion King, but just knowing that it was coming out. I mean, Kingdom Hearts 1 was my favorite game of all time for the longest of times. So Kingdom Hearts 3 for me was like an event. And in the same way, Lion King, the live action remake, was as well, because of course Disney's been popping these things out the wazoo. I mean, we had Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, Maleficent, Aladdin, all these movies, and Lion King was kind of, I think it's largely regarded as Disney's biggest classic movie. You know, everyone kind of recognizes it as a classic Disney film, and it came out in 94. And for me, I was born in 93, so I did not see this movie originally in theaters, but my sister and I watched this movie to death. I mean, our parents probably had to replace the VHS tape a number of times for the number of times we watched it. So much so that when I was 5 years old, my sister and I were actually reenacting the scene from The Lion King at the top of our stairs.
Oh.
And unfortunately for me, I was Mufasa in this incident, and my sister was Scar. And so I whispered to my sister to give me a slight nudge because we wanted to be true to film here. You know, we wouldn't want to like,
Cut
not do the
corners.
movie justice.
Yeah.
And so she quite literally shoved me with all of her 6-year-old might, and I tumbled all the way down the stairs and broke my collarbone.
Damn.
Now, fortunately for Rusty, that was also the night that we got Cartoon Network added to our cable. And so
yeah.
I got a bag of Cheetos out of the vending machine. I remember the nurse sticking a stick of gum in my little harness thing for my arm for my collarbone that broke. And I went home and watched Cartoon Network into the wee hours of the morning. So I was the real winner there, you know.
Mm.
But all of that to say, The Lion King again is really my childhood. I mean, for as much as I watched it, the music, everything about it. And so going to this movie, a lot of hype, high expectations, probably so much so that there's no way it could have lived up to the hype. When I saw the original cast come out, I thought perfection. Like they got Donald Glover and Beyonce to play adult Simba and Nala, two people that can sing, and we need people that can sing. And I think in some of these other live action remakes, Beauty and the Beast in particular, there was a lot of auto tune. and in this movie you have two people that can really belt it. And I thought that was fantastic.
Damn,
I
throwing
thought
shade at Beauty and the Beast.
I like Beauty and the Beast, to be
It's-
fair.
Yeah,
To be fair.
I did too. Yeah, as I surprised myself in liking, really actually enjoying what Emma Watson brought to that role, but yeah, that auto-tune singing is pretty tough.
Yeah.
Tough to get through. Yeah.
And so high level, I'm not going to go into specific details about this movie. When I first walked out of the theater, I was like, damn, that was really, really, really good. I loved what I just saw. I mean, just hearing the music in certain key scenes, Mufasa dying, and just the emotion that goes into a scene like that. I got tears in multiple parts in this movie, and walking away, I was kind of just overflowing with nostalgia. But as I've had a chance to digest the movie, as I talk to family and friends who have seen it, I'm growing more distasteful with a lot of the directions they took. I thought a lot of parts of this movie, especially certain casting choices, served them so well, to the point I think some choices were even better than the original. But then there were some choices in story, dialogue choices, casting, the way they changed certain scenes, that I was just like, what were they thinking? Like, this isn't working at all.
Damn.
And in some ways, I'm like, this is ruining parts of this movie for me. If I had to give it a number, 7. If I had to give Beauty and the Beast a number, I'd probably say 8. So I haven't seen Aladdin yet. If I had to rank my Disney movies, Lion King's probably 1, Aladdin's 2.
Aladdin is 2 for me too. Yeah.
And
Up there.
the listeners should know that I am a tremendous fan of Disney. I literally went to Disney World for my honeymoon with my wife. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Disney. This movie just didn't meet my expectations. It's in no way a bad movie. It's good. And I'll kind of leave it at that.
Okay.
It's fine, kind of. In other words, it's fine, more or less.
Yeah, and I can get into my more specifics. I literally have a list of
Yeah.
things that I loved, a list of things that I just didn't like. And so,
Yeah.
Zach, I kind of want to turn it over to you to hear your general thoughts. for Alec.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I was going to go to Zach next. So your general, like, maybe you lead up to the movie, and then your kind of general impressions as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so going into it, I was kind of the opposite side. I was like, I wasn't expecting much from this movie. Even when hearing the announcement of Lion King going into it, I was like, I feel like that's not necessary. That's not one of the movies I would want to see remade. Especially since it's live action, but not really live action. It's one of those things.
Yeah.
So I was like, what can I actually get out of this movie that I couldn't get from the original? I couldn't think of anything, really. But I went to see it regardless. I went to see it with my family and everything. And I'm kind of at the same spot as Rusty, pretty much. I thought my immediate impressions were that it was okay. That's what I got immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I was watching it, it didn't feel special to me. It didn't feel like the way that Lion King should feel. I felt like there's that special something that was missing. It was just kind of, let's take the elements of this movie, carry it over, but the magic is kind of lost along the way.
Absolutely. Yep.
I thought the voice acting was all really, really good. I thought the music was still really good. But yeah, like you said, a lot of the changes I didn't appreciate, and ultimately the biggest killer for me is the fact that you don't get to see any emotion on these characters' faces, because it's just lions, and that's the biggest killer for me, because the big scenes for me, Mufasa dying, or even any of the endearing reactions between characters, are kind of like you can hear emotion in the voice. It's just weird because it's disconnected from what you're actually seeing. It's like there's just this lion's face. That's kind of the biggest part for me that knocks it down. I don't know what exactly you're talking about, the changes, but I have a feeling you definitely picked up on the kind of self-referential things they did, like referencing their own movie. That in
particular, I actually appreciate.
You like that? Okay.
I did. There's some other things that I can get into. And again, I don't want to spoil things for Alec, because there are parts of this movie that
it's kind of okay, honestly.
Okay.
I have because I've looked into reviews and general reactions and stuff. I pretty much had most of the new-ish stuff spoiled. I would say.
Okay.
The reference he's referring to is I think there's a reference to when they're gonna do the hula thing or something. I think they start doing a reference to Be Our Guest.
They
I
do.
There's a
think
Yeah.
is what it is. Yeah.
there's a
So
couple things
I
like
like that kind of makes me roll my eyes, but I feel like that's one of those things that I would hate and love at the same time because it's like they're doing the little reference thing. That's fun, but it's also like reference thing really in your Lion King. But I don't know. I still don't know. I'd have to see it in the context really to make up my mind on how I necessarily
In the
feel about it.
moment, I appreciated it because I thought there was just limitations with the CGI. Like, are they really going to put a hula outfit on Timon and Pumbaa? Like, it just doesn't necessarily make sense in the context of the realism that they're trying to portray.
right.
And so from that aspect, I was just like, oh, yeah, that makes sense to do that. I mean, when you have the scene, I Can't Wait to Be King, are there really hippos and giraffes and elephants being stacked on each other? Of course not. There's not some psychedelic scene where it's all multicolored and ridiculous. I thought the way they took that scene was outstanding. It was excellent. And if you don't mind me saying, kind of high level, Alec, kind of how they took that scene. As the scene plays out, it's more Nala and baby Simba kind of prancing around the savannah, seeing all these different wildlife. You see antelope and zebra, elephants, and in the way they kind of trot through the savannah, I think it feels so natural and normal. And it's like, yeah, of course, that's the way they would have taken this scene apart from the original Disney animated feature, because you can't stack animals on each other. It would just look ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I think there's certain directions they took that seemed so natural. But then there were certain things that in the film, but more after the fact, that I was really just scratching my head. And I don't know if we want to get into that now or if there's anything that you wanted to add, Zach.
Well, I was gonna say that self-referential in the sense that, yeah, Be Our Guest was one thing, but they also were self-referential to the original Lion King movie in like some minor changes they made, where it was like, basically Timon lets Pumbaa say the word farted now, where
Yeah.
originally he would not let him say it in the song. So it's like this minor thing, and he was like, "Aren't you gonna stop me?" And he's like, "No." Basically,
No, you disgust me.
yeah. So it's like kind of minor revisions. They're in reference. I forget what.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
That they did that. Interesting. See, the thing is, interesting thing is like Jon Favreau, who directed this, is like extremely talented director. Like
Agreed.
I think he's. I mean, just because he's kind of like the Disney talent guy now because he's done the Marvel films. He's in Marvel films too, and in terms of not only did he direct Iron Man 1 and I think 2.
Yep. Jungle Book.
But he's Jungle Book, and I love that movie. I adore
me too.
the Jungle Book, the remake of that. So he's, I mean, obviously you know the Christmas classic Elf, which I'm a huge fan of. He directed that. Yeah. He was in that movie Chef, which he also directed, which I haven't seen, but I've heard just nothing but good things about that movie. Really talented guy. So what it sounds like to me is like both of you guys think that like parts of it. So I'm wondering how much of that is him, because movies are collaborative, and this movie clearly had to be super collaborative because they're not shooting any live action people at all. So like him directing the film, I'm sure is a lot of him making decisions on things like you were saying, like how are we gonna portray I Just Can't Wait to Be King, or how are we going to shoot this scene, kind of thing. Like how are we going to portray that? But in other bits, I'm wondering like how much of it had to do with like the script and the story, people developing that side of it too. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if like I don't want to say like who's to blame for the errors, like. But I guess so. Let's maybe go into some of the critiques or the changes or something like that. I think this would probably be a good time to go into that.
Yeah. So for me, I literally watched the original the night before I went and saw the remake. So there were certain scenes that, I mean, the script I would say is like 85-90%, if not more, word for word the same as the original.
Wow.
Because I mean, I was literally watching the original the night before and then seeing it in theaters, and I'm like, yep, beat for beat, that's the exact same script.
Wow.
It's the areas where they kind of stray from the original. In some areas, you don't even notice it. It's not a big deal. But there's certain things that really add that emotional punch in the original that's lost in the new one. So, for example, when when Mufasa dies and Simba runs down into the gorge and he's trying to see if his father's okay, and he recognizes that his dad is probably dead, and he screams, can somebody help? And then he says, somebody. And then, like, this last gaping breath in the original, he says, anybody.
Anybody, yeah.
He doesn't say that in this one. And so, like, my tears were, like, right there, ready for him to say that, and I was going to lose it. And then he doesn't say it. And then Scar comes in, and he blames him for, Mufasa. The scene plays out, and I was just like, oh, well, that's not really that sad anymore, because that really is what makes the scene that much more gut-punching, because Simba... It's that moment that he accepts his father's death and he knows that no one's going to come, but he's still helplessly calling out for help. And that was so lost for me that I just didn't understand why that wasn't in the film. It just seemed like a complete loss.
Yes, really weird, particularly when you say like the script is like almost 90% there. It just seems very strange to me that they would cut. Yeah, because I totally agree with you. I think that's sort of like almost like I don't say it's like a tension reliever, because it's really the overflow of emotion happens with that like last final like anybody type thing. Like that's an important. I think I agree. That's so important to that line. It's very bizarre that they would do that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Although I did cry pretty heavily in the scene like just before the stampede, when they, of course, go to the elephant graveyard, and Simba deliberately disobeys Mufasa, and they go into the grass, and they're talking, and, he says, nobody messes with your dad. And then they have this dialogue back and forth where Simba says, we're always going to be pals, right, Dad? And that's when he kind of gives him this great circle of life speech. But it was during that moment when Simba asks that question that the tears started welling up for me, because I know, like, next scene, Stampede's going to happen,
Next scene, here it comes.
So that was one of the more emotional parts for me, and it just didn't come full circle without that one word. So,
okay,
amazing how much in a script one word can make such a difference.
It really is.
Yeah.
Especially when the script is 90% the same, it's going to make those changes more obvious.
Exactly.
And especially you watched it the night before. I feel like it's actually been years since I've watched the original, so very different for me, even though I could still tell a lot of the changes they made.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, I mean, I'm disconnected from watching the original, so I didn't really get emotional at any part of the movie, really, because I'm just looking. I could hear like the kind of emotion in the voice, but it's just not translating to what I'm seeing.
Yep.
I think there's no one to really blame for that except for the person who decided to make this movie in the first place.
The producers at Disney that were like, what live action remake can we do next?
Yes,
exactly.
That's a natural imitation of taking a movie that is like so iconic and it's done so well because of how much expression there is in like the animation and all these wacky characters that are like animals. They're animals, but they're like personified, exaggerated versions of those animals. Like where you see the hyenas in this movie now, they're just nasty looking, and they're like they don't have the personality of the originals.
Not even close.
Yeah, and I found even in general a lot of the characters, like the lions, to be kind of indistinguishable. Like even I could hardly tell if it was Nala or what was the name of the mother?
Sarabi.
Sarabi.
Yeah.
I could hardly tell the difference between which one was getting up. It was like the middle of the night, and one of them's getting up, moving. I'm like, which one?
Because in the original, Sarabi had a distinctly almost male voice, and so
she had a deeper. Yeah, she has a deeper voice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And in this one, she definitely didn't. So yeah, her. I can't remember who. If I can see her, visualize her. I don't know the actress's name. But yeah, her and Beyonce didn't really sound very distinguishable at all. I agree. And to that point, Zach, I just felt like certainly there's limitations in the CGI and how much these characters can emote because they look like real lions. But even still, I felt like the line delivery, there was just no passion or enthusiasm in the adult lions' voices for the most part. I felt like the guy who played Scar did a really great job. How and why they didn't get Jeremy Irons back is beyond me, but we're not going to go into that right now. I thought who did play his character did a really great job. But like Donald Glover, I just felt like he was just lifeless. His singing was fantastic, but I just felt like the line delivery elsewhere was just he was just kind of there, just like reading his lines haphazardly. And there was only one distinct line where I was like, damn, he like nailed that, was when he talks to Scar and Scar's like, oh, Your Majesty, how can I repay you? And he says, run. Like, run away, Scar, and never return. I thought he like really just his voice got deeper and so sincere that I was like, wow, he crushed that. Yeah. What was going on the rest of the movie?
Yeah, that's actually one criticism I've heard is that Donald Glover and Beyonce really feel like they phoned in their lines like pretty hard.
Totally.
Which is like that's so sad to hear that because it's like both of them are like very talented people. So it's that's a little disappointing. And that was actually pretty universal. I saw that in pretty much every review I read, even ones that were pretty positive. Yeah. It was still kind of like they were on them a little bit, which is like, that's kind of too bad.
And that's such in stark contrast to Baby Simba and Baby Nala, because I felt like those two,
they were great.
Not only did they have great chemistry, but like the Baby Simba was just had this wild curiosity about him. You could tell he did his research and watched the original, but I felt like he made the part so much his own at the same time. And they had great singing voices. I mean, they were just so good. Yeah. And in the second half of the movie, I'm just like, what happened?
Yeah, I actually watched a video. It was like a short video of some voice acting clips from the movie behind the scenes, and they did some pretty cool stuff where, like, I mean, you could see Jon Favreau directing them and everything, even the kids, and how to like just change the little nuances here and there. But they also even had scenes where they weren't just in the voice acting booth, like they had them moving around as if they were the characters.
Oh,
and
nice.
They were like recording them as they went, so it was like actually had like the choreography going on as if they were actually there. So it was some cool stuff there.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. I've heard Jon Favreau is I watched some behind the scenes stuff for the Jungle Book. He's like super good with kid actors. He seems to be good with pretty much any actors, but like it's always really cool when like a director can really get the best out of a kid actor. So.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, with the limitations, there's also the big change you can notice is Scar, and I mean, he doesn't have his iconic look. With
definitely
the black mane, which I think is definitely another thing you lose when you go from animation to this kind of animation. I mean, just the iconic looks are so much more distinct in the original, and they really, I mean, talking about distinguishable, that definitely helps you distinguish characters, and also on top of the voice acting, I mean, everything's so distinct and the characters are so expressive. So I think you lose a lot going into this movie. But yeah, the positives for me are still most of the voice acting is really good, and most of the music's still really good as well.
Yeah.
Were there any new songs in this?
There was Beyonce. So one really cool sequence that I liked is when Simba and Nala are reunited, and in the original, when Simba collapses on the grass and that dust gets kicked up and eventually makes its way back to Rafiki, and Rafiki says Simba's still alive, and he does a little drawing on the tree. And this one, it's kind of like this long sequence of his part of his mane like falls on the ground and ends up getting eaten by a giraffe. The giraffe ends up pooping it out. A dung beetle ends up like pushing his poop like a long ways, and eventually like it's just this long sequence. It's crazy, it's ridiculous, but it's funny how his mane ends up making its way back to Rafiki. It kind of ties that whole great circle of life thing back better. All of that to say, when he ends up getting convinced by Rafiki, and we'll get back to Rafiki here in a second, and is convinced to go back to Pride Rock, that's when Nala ends up chasing after him, and this song Spirit plays, which has this very gospel like sound to it, which I appreciated. I thought it was really kind of cool how the song played. She caught up with Simba, or maybe it was Simba it was Simba that caught up with her. I'm sorry. And how that song plays and that whole montage, I think, is really pretty neat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other than that, I know Elton John recorded his song for the end of the movie for the credits.
Okay.
That I actually kind of,
yeah.
I kind of liked. I thought it kind of has this nice, catchy vibe to it, but nothing to the tune of his original recordings for the music.
Right.
So yeah, like you were saying with Rafiki didn't do it for me in this movie. Where in the original he was such a good character. I almost like always forgot he was even in this movie. Now I was like,
He's like the integral Yoda character. He's like testing the patience of this upstart that he knows is supposed to be the king. And yeah, I've always Rafiki, he's such an important character just in terms of helping him like stop finally come back to the struggle that he's left behind. Like
Yep.
what like and that's of course leads to the scene where he speaks with his father again with Mufasa. Yeah, every scene with Rafiki in the original is that's like some of my favorite stuff. He's just so kind of weird and off the wall. But he also is like he's part of the pivotal moment of that movie.
He's lifeless. He's lifeless,
and that's
in this new one.
So sad to hear. That's really sad.
Honestly, if Rafiki was the same as he was in the original, this movie would probably be an 8.5, potentially
Wow.
a 9 for me. No, I'm not even kidding, because Rafiki is so critical to the Lion King. He's quite literally the reason why Simba goes back and fights for Pride Rock. Okay, so in the original, Simba's of course lost. He can't go back. Hakuna Matata. And then Rafiki chases him down. He's singing this wacko song about a banana and a coconut. And Simba's like, "Get out of here, you crazy monkey." And he goes through this wild chase sequence, makes it to this river, sees his father's reflection, is questioning everything about his life. And he sees his father through the clouds. And then he, of course, has his staff, Rafiki has his staff there. And he hits Simba on the top of the head, and Simba's like, "Ow, why'd you hit me?" And he's like, "Oh, yes, Simba, the past can hurt. But the way I see it, you can either run from it or learn from it." And it's this great dialogue, not only for the character to have a chance of redeeming himself, but also for young kids, especially this next generation. Let's not even get into the politics of things that are going on in the current state of the world. But to have a dialogue like that for a new generation of youth to hear, yes, the past can hurt, but the way I see it, you can either learn from it or run from it. That dialogue never happens in this movie. He never says that to Simba. He doesn't even have his staff in the scene because the staff is back at his tree. So when Simba ends up running back to Pride Rock, there's a sequence where you see Rafiki go back to his tree, and it's almost like him like pulling out a lightsaber that's like long lost relic out of the bottom of the tree. He pulls it up and like holds it up like this, like, "Yeah, let's go fight." But it loses its entire meaning if you don't have him hitting Simba over the head and telling him to go back. I mean, I was literally like, what's happening? Are you serious? That's not going to happen in this movie? I couldn't believe it. And I know I'm maybe a bit hyperbolic with this reaction, but it was just so puzzling to me that a scene that's so quotable and so memorable that just doesn't happen. It's just baffling to me.
Yeah, that's such an important like line in convincing him to go back. That's like, oh wow, that actually makes a lot of sense. And yeah, that's actually like pretty good advice. You know, like not just in the terms of the movie, but like just in general.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's very, very strange.
Also,
they did that.
It's still such a dick move that Rafiki tells Simba that Mufasa's alive, and he's like, "No, Mufasa's alive," and Simba gets all excited. He's like, "Oh shoot, cool!" And he starts chasing him, starts following him along, and like, "Oh, and the stars and stuff." Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of the characters don't fill that same role they had before, for sure.
I will tell you, I don't remember who voiced Pumbaa, but Nathan Lane as Timon, for me, going into this movie was going to be so hard to replace. I thought Seth Rogen, I was like, oh yeah, he'll be great as Pumbaa. But Billy Eichner, I mean, I know actors and actresses pretty well, I like to think, but I didn't know who he was.
Right.
And man, did he knock it out of the park. Not only does he have a beautiful singing voice, but I felt like the on-screen chemistry between him and Seth Rogen as Pumbaa were just perfect. They steal every scene they're in, and I feel like they really bring this movie to heights that I probably wouldn't rank it otherwise, because there were just so many things that brought it down for me,
Yeah.
and they raised it up so much.
Yeah, they were great, and there was actually a moment where you could literally, it was just a Seth Rogen laugh at one point.
Oh,
He's got that iconic laugh. I was like, whoa, that was just Seth Rogen. That wasn't
it
Pumbaa.
was just Seth Rogen.
Yeah.
It wasn't him trying to be Pumbaa. I loved it. I thought it was great.
Also, one change I didn't notice originally that someone pointed out when I was looking at the comments of this last video is apparently "Can You Feel the Love Tonight" was during the day this time.
Oh,
Is that
I
true?
guess I didn't really. Yeah, it's definitely at night in the original, but I didn't really.
So "Can You Feel the Love Tonight," but
And
not
it's during
tonight.
the
Oh,
day.
yeah, that's
That's-
really interesting. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, it was just
Kind of weird. That's kind of weird if that's the case.
That is very. It is. That's very odd, huh?
yeah.
Can you feel the love today?
Also,
Yeah.
one of my favorite changes in like the music was in Hakuna Matata, where like Simba just starts riffing at the end, like when it's fading off, and
Yep.
Timon's like, "Oh God, he started riffing. Here we go." That was great. I think that was great. I think he hit some really nice notes too. Donald Glover does really well with the music,
Beautiful.
at least.
Beautiful singing voice. I love that scene too because as they're walking away, he wants to do another verse. He wants to do the chorus again, and Simone's like, "No, let's leave them wanting more." And then Seth Rogen's Pumbaa says, "Yeah, you've gained like 400 pounds since the beginning of this
Oh
scene."
yeah.
Like just being so self-aware, I think it was really good. It was really good. My only complaint with those two, and I feel like I'm completely ruining this movie for Alec because we're literally dissecting every scene.
No, it's no. Honestly, this is actually really entertaining for me.
Okay.
So.
But towards the end, one of my favorite scenes in the original is when they go into the cave with the hyenas, or they lead him into there, and they call Pumbaa a pig. And he's like, "Who you calling a pig?" And then Timon, there's just back and forth quip between those two, like, "Oh, you really messed up now by calling him a pig." And when I was a young
Oh yeah.
young kid, when I was like
you were
5,
a young warthog.
well, no. So that's the Hakuna Matata song. But like when at the end of the movie, when they're in the cave, they called him a pig, and he's a warthog. But when I was younger, my dad always had me like reenact that scene because like they called me Mr. Pig, like this big thing. So like I got on like our fireplace mantle and would like say that out loud as like a 5 or 6 year old Rusty. So I had so much ties to that scene. So instead, they call him Chubby, and Seth Rogen has this long monologue about bullying, and says, "I can't stand bullying," and then like starts chasing the hyenas. And I was just like, is Disney just trying to encompass like all types of like political correctness type? I don't know. It just seemed very questionable for me in terms of the direction of the scene.
Yeah, that's all.
I don't know. Yeah.
All right, well, we gotta check off bullying this time. And we're gonna check that one off.
I just
We'll
seemed
get-
so odd.
Every lead female will always get a new song in our movies because that happened in Aladdin, by the way. That song's really good. But again, this isn't about Aladdin. This is about Lion King.
By the way,
Yeah.
when I was a young warthog, there's a nice little flashback to young Pumbaa in there too.
I about died. So you actually see a baby
Oh, there-
Pumbaa.
Really? Oh, that's great.
And he's so cute, so adorable.
Is that might be worth price of admission right there?
Yeah, go
It is.
watch it. So yeah, but that's what I think it comes down to for me is most of the enjoyment from this movie comes purely from nostalgia, just knowing that this is Lion King. If this was a movie they just put out now, I don't think it's not acceptable. Unacceptable.
Yeah, it wouldn't have had the same weight as it did in '94. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's
So seeing this as like a new generation, like my nephew seeing this, I think this was the first time he'd seen Lion King. You know, he's 3 years old right now, so it's like this is his first version of watching Lion King, and then I think they went back and showed him the original afterwards. But it's just kind of interesting to think this could be a new generation's first time seeing this movie,
Yeah.
and it's like it's not quite as good. I'd rather just redirect him to the original, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
right. And I think that raises an interesting, like almost problem, where it's like it almost sends the wrong message in terms of like that they're remaking them. Like the point of a live action remake, I think, is to offer a different take or a different interpretation or a different way to show the story, because that's live action has benefits that animation doesn't have.
Hmm.
And that's kind of one of the beauties of some of these live action remakes of animated
But
films.
it's also a beast at the same time.
It is, it is a beast because I like the reference, by the way. It is a beast too, though, because it almost betrays the fact that animation has these benefits that live action doesn't have. I mean,
Right.
Zach is basically case in point as to like why I was kind of like hesitant to see this movie. It's just because it's great to have that fidelity, to have these animals that look completely real, but it's like, but when they look so real, it takes some of the emotion away from the visual part of the movie, which is just such an important part. I mean, it's really an important part of the movie, what you're seeing on the screen, not just what you're hearing. So
Yeah.
I kind of am like, it worries me that like in the future it's hard to say like, okay, well, which one do you recommend? Do you recommend the original animated one or this other animated one? And it's like obviously critically the animated one was obviously received better. It's a classic. Um, and it's almost like, are they trying to make a it's almost like they're scared to do animation again. It's like they're
Mhm.
scared to do anything original again. It's like they have to return to all their classic money making things. And the thing is, this movie, despite getting kind of mixed reviews, and Aladdin also got mixed sort of reviews too, made tons of money.
It's the second highest grossing movie this year behind Endgame.
Yeah, statistic for you, and this actually broke my heart when I heard it. I think it was its second weekend, um, and it could have been third weekend even. The premiere weekend of Tarantino's new film, which I'm super stoked to see.
Oh, I want to see it
Uh,
so badly.
Once
Yeah.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it came in at second to The Lion King, a movie
Mhm.
that came out
Mhm.
arguably the same movie that came out in 1994. I mean, it's not, obviously we've gone into all the differences and stuff, but it's like it's sad when something that's original with a director that, I mean, give or take your opinion of Tarantino, the guy has an insane vision. Like
He does.
he's like one of the last true visionaries in Hollywood that's not just making a huge comic book movie, which obviously I love the comic book movies, but it's rare to see that, and it's encouraging because the movie did very well, but it's also like it's still open second to a movie that had been out for a week, and it's a remake of another existing property, and it's like you can see why Disney's doing this because it's making money, but it's like I mean it's starting to frustrate me a little bit, because it's like, I've been liking the live action remakes so far, but like I think there's like two or three more still to come out this year. I think they've got Maleficent, I guess, isn't technically a remake. It's kind of a retelling of that,
Yeah.
Mhm.
of her story, I guess. But there's another one coming out later this year, and then there's Mulan early next year. Um, so it's just kind of like
Little Mermaid, they're doing. I mean,
Little
there's.
Mermaid. Yeah. I don't remember the other one coming out this year. Off the top of my head, but um, yeah. I mean, it's just, I don't know. So like, what are your general thoughts after this film now? So what are your general thoughts about the future of these? Because obviously they're here to stay. They're making money. What are your thoughts sort of on the future of these kind of live action remakes?
Well, I kind of agree with kind of where you were going with it. It kind of gives the wrong impression that like these movies need to be remade. Like almost 2D
Yeah.
Yeah.
2D animation is like obsolete when it really is pretty timeless. So
Mhm.
it's like
It is. It's beautiful.
I just don't understand that entirely because it looks like they're just kind of going down the line. All these movies that were 2D animation and Disney's roots, they're kind of just like reworking it. So now when like people look at Disney in the new generation, it'll be like, oh no, they're only known for 3D animation and this realistic lifelike animation style. It's not even like 2D is not even on the table, you know. So
Yep.
I'm not entirely on board with that. In fact, Beauty and the Beast, where I definitely thought it was better than this, I still thought it was just okay. Didn't really
Yeah,
add
100%
too
agree.
much.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
So
I'll
far,
agree with
also,
that. I mean,
go ahead.
yeah, it's a movie I'll rewatch. I have rewatched it. Just I really like the new songs. I like some of the extra world building, I guess is what you'd call it. Some of the context of that era of French history,
Yep.
and some of the stuff that they did with that. I really like that. I love the interactions between Maurice and Belle in that film. Is just like warms my heart every time I think about it. Even some of the beast scenes too, between the extra scenes and dialogue and bits that they have. But yeah, it doesn't quite still doesn't quite have the shine. I mean, Beauty and the Beast is my favorite animated film. Disney, at the very least, Disney animated film, maybe possibly of all time.
Oh wow.
Have to reconsider that at some point, but as I'm thinking about other animated films, obviously now, but I love that movie so much, and it still doesn't quite have that shine, and it's I don't know.
Also,
do you have any?
Also,
yes.
the new Dumbo movie, tragic, not good, not good.
You didn't like it?
Awful.
I saw it with my family, and I thought it was okay. It's not a movie I'll buy. It's not a movie I'm gonna like go out of my way to watch again. Now I should say that I've never seen the original Dumbo all the way through. I think I've just kind of seen bits and pieces here and there. So for me, I had nothing to compare it to. I was going in completely blind with like zero expectations, and for that I found it just entertaining.
Okay, I mean, I had watched like the same year I watched the new one. I watched the original one before.
Okay.
And yeah, that the new Dumbo is not Dumbo at all. That they went the complete opposite direction, to where they took what was like a 50 minute hour long movie and turned it into like hour and a half, 2 hour movie with so much nonsense happen. It was crazy.
When you give the reins to Tim Burton, though, you know that he's going to be very Tim Burton about it. And
Yeah.
I feel like the first like 30 minutes of that movie were like Disney, and then it just went full on Tim Burton.
It was not. Yeah, it was not.
Has he made a good movie in like 15 years?
Yeah,
it's kind of
Damn.
sad, honestly. Like he used to have so much like pizzazz. I mean, he still does have his style, obviously, but like he hasn't really made a good movie in a long time.
But
Yeah.
yeah, the new Dumbo is like the one I point to. Is like, this is why this should not be the trend.
Yeah.
Because it literally just turned into such nonsense. My family, who like my mom watches movies casually, just she doesn't analyze stuff, but she was like laughing at some of the stuff that was happening. It was so outrageous and just nonsensical. We're all just
Yeah.
kind of laughing at the movie by the end of it. But you know.
Never
Yeah.
a good thing with Dumbo, which is supposed to be like a heartwarming story.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Mulan. Let's wait for them to ruin Mulan for us next year.
So okay. So the one thing about Mulan that does have me a little bit more interested, despite the fact that they taking out the best song of the whole movie, is not going to be in it. That frustrates me. But I think, as far as I'm aware, probably in Chinese cinema, there's probably film adaptations of the Fa Mulan story, but I'm interested in that take on it to make it more focusing on her as a warrior, because like in the original Disney film, she doesn't really do any fighting. She just that doesn't happen. But the whole point in the original story is that she does. And so I think I don't even know who's directing this movie, but I think in the hands of the right director, and I think with the right cast, I think you could make a pretty entertaining action film.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Is that I'm approaching this less about like, oh, I want to see one of my favorite Disney movies come to life in live action, and more like, oh, I'm gonna go see an awesome action film.
I hope that they lean into that more, because I think that could offer. Again, what I was saying before about live action offering things that animation can't, I think that's a twist that they can kind of lean into, and if they do that, I think they can have a solid film on their hands, more than just okay, but being like, wow, I really like that. I liked a different, interesting, new take on Mulan.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I'm gonna make a prediction. Maybe we'll reconnect, but when that movie comes out, talk about
Definitely.
that. I'm gonna predict that it's gonna be the same deal as Lion King. It's gonna be just okay.
yeah,
That's
I'll
not-
challenge you guys
kind of
though
worried about that.
to definitely watch the original like the night before we go
Sure,
see
yeah.
like the new one. It's cool
That-
to have that comparison.
I think I think it might help with nitpicking more, but
It's a blessing and a curse. Let me say that.
yeah.
But
Um,
Mulan's another one where it's like so much expression in that movie, and it's like,
Oh yeah,
and we're missing some. From what I've heard, some iconic characters are being taken out entirely. So I'm like, we'll see how it goes, but.
I am Shao.
yeah,
King of the Rock.
yeah, there we go. Rip. So, yeah, Rusty. Final thoughts on Lion King?
Final thoughts, like I said, it's a good movie. Alec, is it worth seeing? I think absolutely. I think just to kind of bring this full circle here, I think it's worth seeing, but don't, as Zach shakes his head, don't rush to the theater. Don't go out of your way to see it. I think our thoughts are gonna. I think I know you well enough that our thoughts are in many ways gonna mirror ours or yours
Okay.
after you see it.
Yeah.
We all share the same opinions.
Wait for Disney Plus.
Yeah, if you're gonna subscribe to that service, then
I would-
yeah,
I
I
would-
probably will.
Yeah, I would
I
pick it
probably
up.
will also.
Yeah, I'll pick it up on VHS if anything.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, I still have all my old Disney VHSs. They're great.
Me too. Me too.
If you give it a score, I guess you already did. Technically, did you both of you give it a score already?
He said 7.
Yeah.
Is
Okay,
it still
7.
7?
I'm gonna bump it down a quarter of a point to a 6.75.
No, we only do it- we only do half points
We only do
in
half
this
points in
channel.
Tarqaron.
All right,
Yeah.
6.5 from Rusty then.
Okay.
Ooh. All right,
That's
wow.
exactly the number I was going for originally, so that's where I'm at.
Bam.
6.5.
6.5. All right.
6.5.
Well, that's disappointing.
I think that makes it
But-
the worst rated movie so far. So that we've watched on Tarqaron.
That we've. Oof. Yeah, we love the movies. We've watched good movies on this.
So instead
And
of
Good Will
watching The Lion King in 2019, go watch Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile, the Ted Bundy movie.
The Ted
There
Bundy
it is.
film.
It's
It's a
good.
family,
There's a lot.
entertainment.
There's a
for
lot
all
more
ages.
expression on Ted Bundy's face than you'll get from the lions in this movie.
That's very true.
Yeah,
In a sick way.
Good old Zac Efron.
Zac
He definitely
Efron's so
emotes
good.
in that movie. Yeah, he's really good in that movie.
That's the
But,
one movie I'm going to keep going back to every. Okay, that's it.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, I mean, maybe I'll go see it. I'll probably wait till the subscription. I really want to see that Tarantino film instead. I
Yeah.
won't take my family to that one, and I'll just go see it by myself.
Alec, if you don't mind, I'd love for you to write in. It could be very brief to the podcast after you see
Yeah.
Lion King, because I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Okay. Yeah,
It'll be
I'll do
like
that.
a couple of years from now.
A couple of years from now, or I
That's
mean, like
totally
maybe
fine.
I mean, it could be the case where like I'm talking to people and they're like, "Hey, we want to go see The Lion King." I'll just be like, "Sure, I'll come. I don't have anything to do."
Yeah.
Or if my folks want to go see it, which I don't know if they really do. I haven't really talked to them about it, to be honest. So we'll see. But
Good
alrighty,
stuff.
cool beans.
Well, thanks for joining us, Rusty, for this lengthy discussion on solely Lion King. You
Yeah,
stayed completely
absolutely.
on topic.
Well,
Always a
I think-
pleasure.
I mean, it is. I think it's important to talk about the idea of what they're doing as a whole, especially when it comes to this most divisive one so
Yeah.
far. So
So,
Yeah.
I mean, the next time we meet, who knows? Maybe it'll be Tales of Vesperia, Definitive Edition,
I sure hope so.
Yeah, me too.
or maybe it'll be whatever the next live-action Disney movie is. And
Good
we'll
episode
we'll,
7.
we'll talk about a solid 7 out of 10 movie again.
Or maybe we'll do a discussion when Zach finishes Kingdom Hearts 1. You know, you never know.
Okay, never happening. So I want to be surprised and come back when Mulan comes out and be like, "Oh, this is a 9 out of 10 movie. Ooh, so good."
I'd love that. I'd love that.
I would really like that to
I'd
happen.
be shocked though. I mean, I love the female actress. I'm on board with that. All right, thanks.
She's a cutie. That's for sure.
All
All right, we're bye.
Justice for Mushu.
All right.
All right.
Signing off.
Hashtag.
Justice for Mushu.